Hi guys and gals, Shane Stevenson here at the Buffalo Naval Park again. I know if I can keep my balance. Excited to bring you this video. Got the whiteboard here, got some notes. Alright, and I'm going to give you the origin of this story. To know everything about the U.S. Navy is quite a feat and quite a task. All right, I would say that Norman Friedman is probably one of those individuals that pretty much knows every single thing about the U.S. Navy from certain time periods. But this also combines that work that I've been doing with some volunteers in the U.S. Naval Institute Proceedings. And so this is going to be about the CLVs. Familiar or not? Also known as flight deck cruisers. Really cool. I wish they were actually constructed. They had been around and designing them for quite a long time, but none ever got constructed. All right, so I'm going to kind of run through a little of the history of it, and I've got some images, not many, but I will show you what I've got and kind of talk about that. So, without further ado, let's get to the whiteboard here. And here was the impetus for this video. All right, this comes out of a 1923 Proceedings. It says Future Fighting Ships and Impression. And I looked at that and said, oh, how interesting, right? You got 3 6-inch guns here. You got a long flight deck here. They show a plane taking off. And then, of course, they have the top-down view. All right. So I imagine from this view, this upper deck was the landing deck. Here was the elevator. And the darker line underneath it would have been the actual takeoff. And then the planes would have come back, landed, gone down the elevator for repairs, kind of like that's the hangar deck and the flight deck, and then the landing deck right there. All right, so the short life of the flight deck cruisers, the CLVs, roughly about 1920 to 1939. They really are born from, again, those interwar treaties, Washington, London. All right, they limited both the carriers and the cruisers' designs in terms of tonnage, obviously number that could be constructed, and armaments. And so therefore, the General Board, the U.S. Navy, came up with the CLVs, a mixed ship design, as we see up here. So who are some of the players in this 19-year quest? So we have the General Board, we have the Bureau of Aeronautics, and we have, of course, the Bureau of Construction and Repair, which would eventually become the Bureau of Ships. And the preliminaries of the vessel were 24 aircraft could be carried, 12 fighters, 12 dive bombers. You'd have 3 6-inch turrets, all forward. You could have up to, again, preliminarily, 6 5-inch mounts along the waist, and then, of course, 1 forward and 1 aft. Roughly about a 332-foot flight deck. Top speed would be about 32.5 knots, which is good. We're right in the line, right in the pipe for cruiser speed, with about 80,000 shaft horsepower. And the call was for it to be about 637 feet in length. So what were some of the challenges? They found that it protected really only up to other 6-inch shells from enemy ships. Right? They would design it with about a 4-inch armor belt. Of course, there would be the protected belt, armored deck, as well with high tensile steel. Of course, it limited the placement of the main batteries. all right, and mounts due to the flight deck and certain, of course, weight balances that they need to make sure they got right. They had trouble finding home for the 5-inch gun director. And with about roughly 6 5-inch mounts, that would be quite imperative. All right, of course, cruisers traditionally were solitary or detached ships. All right, so very early studies showed that they could be easily surprised to air attack without fleet protection. All right, picket ships like destroyers. All right, looking out for the fleet. And of course, if you're talking 1920s, that's before the advent of really long-range radar that you would have seen in World War II. Some of the advantages, of course, were better scouting. All right, you can send the planes out. Better convoy escorts. So in terms of, you know, what the future held with the Battle of the Atlantic Ocean, you know, it would be very nice to have a couple of these CLVs attached to a convoy where you could fire torpedoes, have scout planes, all right, and you have the 6 and 5-inch. What they found was they gave it to the Naval War College, and they did some preliminary war games, and they found that it could engage with many different types of vessels, and they had great first strike capabilities, especially if they knew that they were going up against destroyers or cruisers. You know, they'd be able to send the planes out over the horizon. So by the mid to late 30s, all right, the General Board, all right, now you're getting into potential some war conflicts, imminent war conflicts. So the General Board polled its senior commanders, and of course all of these other straight cruisers took precedence over the CLVs. By that time, you're working on the Baltimores, Brooklyns, Alaskas, and Clevelands, and the CLVs took, let's say, 5th place. All right, with only a few voting to complete and construct 1 or 2 as experiments. So none were ever actually constructed. All right, so let's take a look at some of the, at least, designs on paper. All right, as I showed you, there's the roughly 1922 design. All right, here's a design where the flight deck isn't on the back like we just showed, but it was along the whole superstructure here. And that would be about 200 feet in length. And you can see that kind of odd placement. You had the 4 6-inch turrets, and then you'd have 4 5-inch mounts in that kind of non-symmetrical design. Here's one closer to the original with the flight deck on the back. All right, and then the myriad of guns. I do not know if those are 5 inches, but there's the 6-inch, 3 6-inches. All right, and other anti-aircraft short range here. And 2 engine rooms. Find that interesting. So it actually would have been quite nice if even one was constructed, so there'd be some photographs other than just blueprints and designs and drawings. But like the Northampton, all right, I think that would have been really cool to see. And it would have been really cool to then be able to study them more than just preliminarily, like we see here. So again, they kind of had some momentum in the 20s and 30s, but the General Board, the senior commanders of the General Board, said, okay, if war and conflict is imminent, we are just going to build straight aircraft carriers. All right, the traditional aircraft carriers. No need to mess these up. We've got the big building programs with the Baltimore and the Brooklyn and the Cleveland and Alaska. We'll just construct what eventually turned into escort carriers, independence carriers, Essex carriers, right, for World War II. And so I think by that time, this design had probably been passé. Please leave questions and comments. Always enjoy engaging with you guys. And season's ramping up. Today, we have a lot going on. We have the Sea Cadets here. It's Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And, an encampment tonight. So there's a lot of activity. So it's nice that I have the Admiral's Quarters is a little quiet for me to bring you this video. All right, and we will see you again soon, everybody. Thank you again for all of your support, and take care.